Hello and welcome to Start the Beat with Sykes. My name is Sykes and this is my podcast. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank everyone who checked out the last episode. If you're one of those people,
I'm one of those people. I am.
Thanks so much for coming back, but for everyone else out there who's new to the show, welcome. Feel free to make yourselves at home, and as always, there's beer, soda, water, coffee, tea in the fridge. Cheers. Yes. All right, it is a sweaty Thursday in Pittsburgh, PA.
Yeah, real sweaty.
And I am sitting here today with, hold on one second, let's do a glug glug. I'm sitting here today with someone who I just met a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, mere minutes.
This is another episode of Strangers in My House. Everybody make some noise for my new friend, Lance Parkin.
Too kind.
Everyone's happy that you're here.
I'm happy I'm here.
I'm happy that you're here. Why are you here?
I guess I just like talking about creativity. So,
cool.
You know, I had a movie come out recently, so I just wanted to. I think we have a mutual friends in the Neon Brainiacs. I'm pretty sure that's where our midpoint is, and I liked your show, so I want to get on. I like what you talk about on it. So
cool, man. Well, thank you for coming by.
I sought you out.
So you are a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And a human being on planet Earth. Is there anything else you want to add to the resume there?
Yeah, I mean, mostly these days, filmmaking. I used to be a cartoonist back in the day, but I've been a filmmaker for about 8 years now. I used to run film festivals in the city, but I have stopped doing that because, you know, it takes a lot of work, and I like giving back to the community, but at a certain point, you just got to focus on your aspirations yourself and make it happen, you know?
Yeah, as somebody that does a podcast that I consider quitting at least once a month, I understand 100%.
Yeah, you got because you have plenty of other obligations too on top of it, you know?
Yeah. But like none of it is important, which makes me feel like, fuck it. Like, that's fine. I could do this. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean,
but also it's not important. So it's like, why?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the creative struggle I've been going through.
Oh, really? Like, you don't find it important?
Not the podcast, no.
Just why not?
But I know that's wrong because people hit me up all the time and they tell me that they enjoy it.
Yeah,
which helps.
You're like what, 400 deep now or something?
Yeah,
right?
you'll be episode 402.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's a hell of a.
Yeah. You know, I don't know what it is. Maybe we can start here. You know, it's the creative mind. I find that I overanalyze things. It's like my creativity getting the best of me. I always think of like the worst case scenarios and overanalyze everything instead of just letting things be, which I try to do, which is why I'm still doing the podcast. But I don't know. I still get those feelings of like, why? Why should I do this?
Well, like, is that really, when you say you overanalyze it, is it you just don't, like, how do you overanalyze it? Like, what do you mean by, like, why? Like,
I think that, you know, sometimes I feel like there isn't anybody listening, but then people hit me up that tell me they listen. I'm like, oh, okay, people are listening. Yeah. I just get in my own head. Like, nothing's ever good enough. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you know, you get you know, you buy one camera and all of a sudden it's like all I wanted was one camera, right? I just fought for one camera. Then I got one camera. The next thing, it's like, well, I need two cameras now.
2 cameras.
And then I need you know, it's
then
like,
you got lights.
Yeah, nothing is ever enough. But you know, this less about me, more about you. How do you deal with just the struggles of the negatives of being creative? Let's start there, because there's no reason for us to do this shit other than our own selfish desire. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think expression is a necessary component to being a happy person. I feel like.
Ooh, that's deep.
Yeah. Like I don't know if I would write it off so easily as to say it is like a selfish desire as much as it's a necessary thing that I think we all have to do. And I think when people don't adequately express themselves, or if they don't take the time to examine their experience as a person and the things around them and how they feel about it, or say things they want to say, it leads to, I think, a lot of the unhappiness and toxic behaviors we see around us, because whether it's people holding them down or people holding themselves down, you know, like, I just feel like it's a pretty necessary thing for all of us that we should try to do, you know? So it's like, I mean, follow those threads, you know, and sometimes they go nowhere and sometimes they go they enrich your life, but it's like, what's important is that you tried, you know what I mean? Like, what's important is that you even bothered, because it's better to bother and fail, I think, than to like never even try to do it and then just be like, 65 someday and be like, well, what would have happened if I tried that? At least what happened when you tried it,
Yeah.
like, what's wrong with that? I mean, you're doing a podcast for a long time, and I think if you find any sort of audience and it matters to them at all, then it's worth it, right? Like,
Totally. I think that, again, I get in my own head a lot about like what my expectations of this whole thing are. And I know that it's like really, really absurd, which is why I am still doing a podcast. I always have to kind of like consistently put myself in check and be thankful for what you have and be thankful for the circle of people that you have around you. Because also it's very hypocritical in the sense where, if a podcast maybe like, if something I put out doesn't get a lot of attention, I feel bad in some sort of a way. But I feel like I've been like crafted by society to feel bad in that way.
Definitely, yeah.
And also on the flip, if like 3 people text message me at once, it's like the end of the world because I kind of want to be left alone too.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird, like I want people to pay attention to what I'm doing, but I also want people to leave me alone.
Yeah,
but if people leave me alone, I feel bad because I feel like they're not paying attention to me. It's this weird vicious cycle that I think a lot of it has just been manufactured by our ding dong cell phones and everything else, or at least the way that we use the cell phone, not the cell phone itself,
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
However you want to consider that.
Yeah, there's a entire culture of always on attention, which I think is also pretty toxic, like you need to be able to understand yourself and like time by yourself, but you don't want it to be that way. And I don't want to get too insane with how I think about things, but why do the people who make these things, they wouldn't want us to not be on them all the time because they need to put the ads in front of us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this culture gets manufactured for us all to like always be on, but you turn it off sometimes, but don't be like, express yourself, like put yourself out there in the ways that matter to you, not, like if you don't want people bothering you all the time, just don't like, you can be alone. It's okay not to respond for a while, it's okay to do that because you need that time. But expressing yourself creatively through like a band or through like a movie or through a podcast, like that's a different type of thing, That's a different way of like communicating with society or putting yourself out there,
The other thing that I've had to like really become familiar and comfortable with and recognizing is just like how niche of a demographic what I do is for.
That's important.
This kind of shit isn't for everybody.
Is important.
Yeah. And, I don't think a lot of people like to have these like self-analyzing conversations where you kind of like beat yourself up for the better, which that's not what the show always is, but I do that a lot. And I'm also doing it with like creatives in the Pittsburgh, PA area, and it's such a small fucking bubble. So it's like, how many people should I expect to really be on board with this in the first place?
No, that's true. That's really true. Healthy expectations is important in anything in life, like having a healthy, like a reasonable, rational expectation, because our expectations will always get the better of us because, like it's always, whether it's like, cavemen looking into the dark, like what's out there, you know what I mean? Like you're going to fantasize anything. You're in an open body of water and you have no idea what's underneath it. You're always going to think it's always like the biggest, worst shark, but it could be a bunch of algae, you know what I mean? But having a tangible like expectation, like you're saying, like it's healthy to like talk yourself down and be like, this is very niche. Like this sort of conversation on its own is very niche, but then like I'm doing it for a specific demographic in a specific geographic area, like you're right. Like you might not get as much, but you at the same time, you are offering that to those people when perhaps no one else is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
maybe not, I think I'm like criminally humble at times.
Yeah.
Because also, in this realm of arts and entertainment, dog eat dog or however you want to put it, you kind of got to put yourself out there. You got to be on a pedestal. You kind of have to be a little arrogance will get you a long way in this realm. And I'm just not
delusion.
not that fucking person.
Yeah.
And I find it like really hard. It's like, over the past few years of my life, I've really like come into being like, oh yeah, like I grew up an introvert. I am an introverted kid, but all of my activities are incredibly extroverted activities, playing in bands, doing podcasts. I'm into things that involve other people.
Yeah.
But it like needs to be the right kind of people in order for me to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm still like
I can relate.
in my shell.
Yeah, for sure. I can relate.
So, you know, with you and your creative background, you said that you started doing like cartooning. You said you were drawing.
I did it. Well, I always wanted to do film and video and movies. I've always wanted to do that. But before, when I was in high school, I didn't grow up in Pittsburgh. I grew up near Johnstown, right? So I grew up in a small mountain town before the digital revolution, I mean, because I graduated in 2003, right? So like, this stuff you couldn't just go to Best Buy and buy like a DSLR for like $1,000 that looks awesome, right?
Yeah.
It was like the idea of you gotta buy film and you gotta do this and you gotta do that. Like to do things back then, like, even though we had digital video, was it's dog shit or whatever. Like,
oh yeah.
So you couldn't really do it. So my parents had always told me you could do whatever you want to do. It wasn't my family, but the school system around me or like the world around me made me believe that was not a possible dream unless I wanted to go to New York or LA, which I was not ready for that sort of change, right? And I just drew as a hobby. So I ended up settling for a hobby and be like, well, it's better than working in an office somewhere, And it just didn't work. I had a webcomic in the mid 2000s, which was a very popular time for webcomics. And I had a following and I was doing pretty well with it, honestly, for where I was at in my age. And I don't know, it just wasn't working for me. Even when as far as to go to art school, I didn't go to school for film. And it just didn't work for me. I just felt like I needed the movement and the sound and like the kinetic energy of film versus just like drawing pictures, you know what I mean? Doing cartoon and then being a cartoonist and just doing like this like darkly funny webcomic thing that was probably just a ripoff of Joan and Vasquez, like
Sure.
really like it was very much like Jimmy Hewlett's art from Gorillaz and stuff, Tank Girl, and Joan and Vasquez's like Squee comic. Like it looked a lot like the mix of those two things. So I just knew I wasn't being true to myself, underneath it all. So I gave it up, and I felt really lost for like 3 or 4 years, just sort of like, what am I doing, dude? And I got involved in film in Pittsburgh through the 48-Hour Film Project, which you may be familiar with, may not.
Yeah, I am.
A lot of people seem to participate in it. I'm a big advocate for it because I think it is a good place for anybody who, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, I always wanted to try it out. I mean, dude, just follow their Facebook page, go to their meetup events, like get involved that way. Because I met a guy named Ed Wong who showed me the ropes on set. And then I started helping with their 48 team. And I met a guy who was also helping and didn't know anybody named Jeff Smee. His brother is Greg Smee from Woman. It's like a band in Pittsburgh. I don't know. Some people hear it, but some people haven't. And I met him and we like hit it off really well. And we became like creative partners. And like by a year later, we got second place, we got first place in the competition. Like he's gotten best cinematographer, I've got best director. We like really turned things around quickly together. And because our first movie had no credits, like no credit music. And the second one was like second place because we had such synergy as creative people. And then my friend Matt, who I'd known for 20 years, helps me write the stuff, Matt Schultz, and he was part of it. So it's like I just found people who like resonated with me,
Yeah.
And it's just like I really felt like that was validation that what I was doing was a decent move because like I was seeing tangible results, but even without it, I still would have pursued it because it felt right, because I'm like a person who is like eternally trapped in my youth. Like I'm always looking for that feeling of when like the world was new and like things seemed possible, and it's tough in 2021 to feel that way.
Totally.
Right.
Totally. And like going back to, the way that I feel and all of those beginning points that we made at the top of the conversation, I think back on when I was happiest as a creative person, and a lot of it is that like post high school, just figuring it out. I didn't know anybody in the music scene. I didn't really know anybody in the art world or the film world, all of these like, these areas of things that I was interested in, but I just did shit with my friends to do it.
To do
And there
it.
was like, we had like MySpace, but like you logged on it every other day. It wasn't like
Yeah.
a thing that's buzzing in your pocket all the
Yeah.
time. It wasn't anywhere near what social media is now. So like I had time to just kind of get lost with my friends and like live and exist in this small bubble. And like I
Yeah.
was happier
No, I agree.
in that realm of just being in this place where the outside world doesn't matter as much. Even if I like tell myself now that the outside world doesn't matter, part of it still does. It's still like been baked into my DNA over the past decade
Yeah.
of like giving more of a shit about what strangers think of me. I don't know what the fuck that is.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, it's true in that to be ultimately successful, you do have to find an audience that you appeal to.
Yeah, I
You know what I mean?
suppose,
You know what I mean? Like
Uh-huh.
that's to be successful in a, I guess, objective sense, like, you know, whatever you define success as, I guess. But if be financially successful via your hobby or your love would be, you have to find an audience, you know. But yeah, I mean, I agree though, because I had a period of life where I was back with my friends back home, hanging out in our friend's attic, like after I dropped out of college, before I went to art school, where all we did was just like write and brainstorm potential stories, and like it really was nothing other than just thinking of ideas, but it was so fun, you know. Like, and I still value that time more than a lot of periods in my life, you know. I miss it a lot, you know, for sure.
So with, you know, your cartoonist comic book phase, whatever we want to call that, right? You mentioned having like this, you know, Jonan Vasquez, Jamie Hewlett sort of influence. I imagine that you had some sort of film influence as well from like wanting to do film. Were you like a movie dork growing up?
I would say, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the stuff I liked real hard. Yeah, and I would peruse IMDb and read the trivia and all that bullshit stuff I don't do anymore.
I guess like, you know, the ultimate question would be, you know, in the way that you realized that maybe like your influence was seeping in too much into your cartooning. Do you ever come across that with filmmaking?
Not as much, no, because I feel like I have always been sort of dreaming up stories and things I wanted to do. Like a lot of the ideas I still want to pitch based on how well Boonies does, are ideas that I may have even thought of, that I've been thinking over for 15 years, you know?
Yeah.
So like I feel like creatively most of us are just a composite of our influences with our own sort of flair thrown on it. And I don't think that it is a bad thing, because that's what culture is shared ideas and shared influences. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So like I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think my influences, I would proudly wear them on my sleeve, you know, things that influenced me as a filmmaker, the time period that influenced me as a filmmaker. But yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't see it as much with my comics. I think they were, because I didn't have the heart in it the same way I have. I think that's the
I
answer
understand
I'm
it,
looking
yeah.
for. Like I don't feel the burning that I feel when I make a movie or when I think of a movie idea. Like that
Mhm.
comes from a pure, like deeper place in me. Like that feels like a more pure form of expression.
Yeah, I think that there's something that really bothers me about the way people like critique art, whether it's somebody else's or their own, and like this incessant need for everything to be original.
Yeah, it's
Like if you're
possible.
trying to be different, you're gonna be crap. Like you
Yeah.
just have to not think about it. And if it's,
You
I
get too-
always think about like food. Like there's nothing original about a cheeseburger, but if
Yeah.
you can make a really fucking good one, then whatever.
Yeah, like
I-
not.
yeah.
People are gonna remember that more than they're gonna remember some like weird burger that has like all kinds of weird shit on it, and they're like, that burger was like terrible. You know what I mean? Because if you get too original, they're gonna call you weird.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Like they're gonna call you weird. So it's just like, okay, so I'm either derivative or I'm weird, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I think that
for some people.
the main goal, at least with anything I've done, is just to be like, just be happy with what I do and be happy while I'm doing it. And
That's
I
all
think
that
there's,
matters,
you know,
dude.
I'm not like an incredibly spiritual person, but I think that there's just like a certain energy that gets baked into your art
Yeah.
where like, I think people can tell, like if you're on stage performing and if you're not into it, people can see that shit. Or if you don't put it all into, you know, like an episode of a podcast or something, like people can pick up on that energy
Yeah.
and they're not gonna,
Yeah, it feels
they're
less
not gonna,
spirited.
yeah,
or
they're not
something.
gonna dig into it.
No, I agree. Yeah, totally. I see what you're saying. I mean, I can get a little woo, but I won't. But yeah, I agree though. I feel like there's a tangible energy if your heart's in it, both for you and both the producer of that and the consumer of that can feel that,
Yeah.
I believe that.
Now, with the movie that you've just made, do you feel like talking about that at all? Do you feel like promoting it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's probably a decent idea.
Let the world know about this ding dong thing you did.
It is called The Boonies. It was shot in Pittsburgh and areas of Somerset and some spots in Millvale even, where I live now. It was interesting. The story of The Boonies is funny because I have another thing I had made called Theo and the Professor. It was a web series that we kickstarted, raised like 11 grand for, and made 7 episodes. Got them on Amazon Prime. It's also on YouTube, and it's like a horror comedy show, like in the vein of like I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's like Kolchak the Night Stalker from the 70s meets like Erie, Indiana, or something. Like It has this like sort of fun energy. But these two guys, that one of them's really old, one of them's sort of young asshole, and they like have to investigate a monster of the week thing. And we did that, and we put it on Amazon, and we were making good money, and like good money for us at our level. We were like, wow, it's getting organic. Like the algorithms on Amazon Prime, people were discovering it. We could see the stats raising. We're like, oh my God, like people are organically finding this show. And like, we worked so hard on it for 2 freaking years. Right. And then, as is apt to happen, the big guys decided to change the algorithm. So it used to be that everything was equal, right? And you could be found just as likely as, I don't know if that was on Amazon at the time, but episode of the X-Files, somebody watches it, like they might refer like Supernatural and our show in the people who also watched. Not that any of these shows I think were on at the same time, but then they changed it. So it became this view structure, and the more views you got, the more likely you were to be recommended. So all that really does is recommends all the big boys, and all the indie people get buried. And dude, the minute that algorithm, like the day it was going to go into effect, the graph like plummeted, like straight line down.
Oh man!
After 2 years of work and so much love and effort, and like I really believed in the show, I loved the show, and it really hurt. Like it was a burn, dude. And I was just like, what am I gonna do, right? Like, damn. And we just sort of, me and Smee and Matt and our other creative partners, we were all just sort of thinking about what the next thing to do was. And Smee discovers on Craigslist, he finds a post from 2 dudes from Somerset County, in Johnstown area or whatever, one of them used to work in the film industry, and they're older now, so they want to fund a film from indie film people in Pittsburgh. And I replied, it's crazy, right? And I reply to the ad, and he meets with me, and they met with like 10 other people, and they liked our idea, which they wanted to make a low budget horror movie. That's what they wanted. Cool. So I pitched this like cannibal redneck horror movie because I haven't seen one in a while, and they liked it. So they were going to fund it. And like these 2 dudes produced it, and I wrote it with Matt. Me and Matt wrote it. I directed it. I did all the sound design, and Smee shot it. And we had like a 35-person crew. It was like the biggest thing I ever worked on in terms of professionalism.
Yeah.
And like making sure all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and like well produced. And I was like, wow, this is awesome, And then we finished it, and it got picked up by Indica in LA, and it's got a national VOD release. So it's like, if you pulled up an Xbox or Google Play or anything, like a cable on demand, it's on there. So I mean, people can watch it for $5 or buy it for 10 or 20, I can't remember. But on any video on demand platform, it is available, and it gets a physical release in Best Buy and Walmart on July 27th.
Cool.
And it's just like crazy, and I went from feeling like it's fun. It's how life can go sometimes. Like I went from being like, God damn it, the biggest thing I ever worked on, what I thought would be this web show that I could like turn into like a show pitch, maybe I had this whole dreams for that show. Just getting stonewalled by corporations and being like, God damn it, till like a year and a half later, like getting a big deal, like perseverance, I guess, is key in any creative endeavor, because you never know what's around the next corner. It could be a massive disappointment, or it could be a huge windfall,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about in the realm of like, what is success and how do we define success, and also like what do we define as like a failure or like a misstep, right? I think that with myself, I find it really hard sometimes. Again, you put all this time into something, and like you're like, why didn't this work? You know, like I think it's easy to be like, okay, like in your case, which is probably very, very true, uh, algorithms change and that fucks with a lot of people, right? But I think another problem too is that sometimes some people that I know, like here's a good example. Somebody that I'm friends with on Facebook was talking about how um they think it sucks that their band doesn't make any money off of Spotify streams and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, that does suck, right? Like
Yeah.
that's terrible. But I went on their band Spotify and they have 5 monthly listeners.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So wait a second here. Like there's only 5 people that
Yeah.
are maybe listening to
So how
your
could
band.
you?
So yeah, why are you letting this get to you? And there's
Yeah.
like this other conversation where like sometimes you got to tell yourself like maybe my band isn't good. Maybe the song that I wrote is not good. That's why it's not working. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, or maybe it's not necessarily good or bad as subjective, but you're just not connecting with the audience. You know, wrong time, right product, wrong time. Like there's
Yeah.
always like those movies that, you know, 10 years later it becomes a cult classic, right?
Yeah, that happens
And
a lot.
Maybe your TV show will become a cult classic.
That would be rad. 'Cause I really
after
love that show.
after the movie does well.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that, and that's what's weird too is that the movie, like, since we got picked up from the people in LA and stuff, and Lionsgate did the distribution too, so like it was big deal. But I have no idea how well it's doing or not well it's doing or anything because they don't tell you until the quarter closes and they do all the math and they do all that shit, which is like the first week of August because it came out in April. So I'm just been like hanging out, being like, hope it did well, because like however it makes will dictate how big of a project I could like move on to or pitch in the future or whatever. So it's very weird, like limbo to be like floating in, like, whoa, what's going on next? You know, that is weird for sure. But
Yeah.
I mean, at least it got this far. That's what I think. Like,
Yeah.
at least got this far. I mean, that's more than a lot of people at my level of this career could say.
Sure.
So, like, I'm happy with it, you know?
Now, in terms of like the creative process, like, you know, I find that being primarily a music dork, that's what I do. I'm writing songs. So like these little 3, 4, 5 minute blips of entertainment, like on a consistent basis. And I get together weekly with people and we play these songs over and over and again, right? But when you're making a movie or anything that's film related, that's kind of a different skill set. And like, how do you necessarily like practice or rehearse or sharpen your chops for like getting behind the camera? Is there a way to do that?
I mean, it comes down to, I guess, just like learning film is really just freaking doing it, right? So it's, even if it's just 5-minute short films or something, like, I think that's one reason I really liked the 48-hour film project. 'Cause our team, like me, Smee, Matt, and anybody who'd done it with us, we did it for a couple years, and there was 2 a year. And I was such an advocate for it that when the previous person, the city producer, Camila Adams, left, I actually took over for 2 years and helped run it for the city. A guy, PJ Gaynor, does it now, and he's doing a great job. But like, I that's why I'm such an advocate for it, because what it does is it forces you to make something in 48 hours, and like, you don't know what it's going to be, because you get a random genre, and every team gets the same prop, character, line of dialogue, but you have no idea what you're going to make, and you're forced to do it. And then you're sort of like compared amongst, you know, they show it on a theater and people vote. So like you're sort of like you see how you compare to peers, you know, also doing it. And I think that was a really healthy way to practice it, for sure, especially for us. I mean, that was like our school of it, really, because like, you know, Smee's self-taught, I'm self-taught, like Matt like none of us professional training in any of these things, but he's been doing it for 10 years. Like I've been doing it now for 7, like. And it came down to just doing it. So, and if you're not doing something like the 48, it's just trying to make it over and over and just try to do a little better every time. Like just try to improve, like watch it over and over and just sort of be like, I guess the sound could be better. And how do I make sound better? Like, is it the equipment? Is it how we did it? You know, like, oh, the cuts are pretty rough. You know, you can see what's, you know, and I've also been a big advocate of, especially if you're doing horror. I don't always want to do horror forever, but watching bad horror movies is a great education, because you can sort of be like, what didn't work here? Like, why am I not feeling this? Is it the pacing? Is it the sound? Like what are the elements that make me feel like this doesn't work versus a movie that does, you know? And like, I feel like that helps a lot, is just sort of looking at stuff and trying to figure that out that way. But
yeah, I think that I've definitely and everything's a learning experience. And sometimes if I'm at a show and we're getting ready to play and I'm watching, maybe there's a band that's opening up, might be a younger band, objectively good or bad, who knows? Maybe I'm not feeling it. Maybe they're a little under rehearsed or just under experienced. And especially when I was like coming up, I would always like watch bands like, okay, that person looked really dumb when they did that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't say that. Don't, take notes on the things that other people were doing that kind of make you cringe.
It's true.
And like internalize that, right?
No, it's true, because it helps you it helps you moderate your own behavior. Like, that's a great point. Like, especially for performers like you, like performers like yourself, to sort of be like, oh, I didn't like that. And then it can help you sort of check yourself. You know? We always got to be checking ourselves in this life.
Yeah.
One problem with, I think, modern society is the echo chambers that social media allows, creates an epidemic of people not fucking checking themselves.
Sure.
Right.
I used to joke all the time about like, I think it would be not a bad idea if on social media platforms, like whenever you go to post something, there's like a 5-minute timer before it actually posts.
Would not be. Yeah.
And then, like, are you sure you still want to say this thing on the internet to thousands of people? Yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, that would do a lot. Like, and that exact notification worded that way, like yes or no, like, are you still sure? Like, maybe not. Maybe I'll look like a colossal asshole or like ignorant person. Yeah, I agree.
With collaborating and working with other people, it's something that it took me a long time to get comfortable with, but eventually you get to a certain point where you have to collaborate with other people as a creative, especially if you're making fucking movies, right?
Yeah, man. That's what
so
you have to do.
what is that like teamwork and sharing responsibility thing like for you? Do you find that it's easy to work in teams, or are you like a control nut?
I enjoy it, definitely. I'm an advocate of the directing style of, I don't remember where I heard it or whatever, but I always say it, that like 50% of the job of a director is what you want in enforcing your vision, right? I think a good director listens to the ideas of everyone around them and knows in their head what they think the vision should be, and the ideas you hear that enhance the vision you use, and the ones you hear that you don't, like, you can filter them as like, that actually makes that strengthens the vision, and that one detracts from it,
Sure.
And like half of it is just listening to everyone else's ideas and applying the ones that you think will improve it. Like far be it from me. I do not think that, like, I'm some ultimate authority when I do it. Like, I'm very open to everyone's ideas, and I encourage everybody on my sets, which is probably why people like to always come back to my sets. I like to be like, whatever you're doing for this movie, that's yours. Like, if you're lighting it, if you're shooting it, if you're costume, your music, like, that is like your piece,
I think it's important to let people know and give up the right amount of control. At least, like, being in a band, it's like I had this epiphany one day where it was like, I have all of these people around me and I agree to work with them because I trust them. I think they're really good at what they do.
Yeah.
So let them fucking do it.
Yeah.
Like, why would you bring all of these talented people that have these various skill sets on board and then, like, no, you're going to do everything the way that I want to do it? You're almost better just finding like worker ants to just do whatever you're going to do.
Like, what's the point of even collaborating then? You know? Like,
With actors and actresses and things like that. Now, that's something that I imagine for me, if I were to ever make a movie, I tried to make a horror movie in high school. And it was really just because I wanted to score a movie, but I didn't know anybody that made movies.
Yeah.
So me and my friends made a shitty movie with camcorders.
Just to score it.
It looks like shit. Sounds great.
That's cool.
But the thing is, though, like, I think that the thing that was always really intimidating about it was finding people that could be in the movie. Granted, we were in high school. We were friends. Like, I didn't know. There's no casting calls or things like that, or even finding people that can do it. But acting can be really, really hard, I think, in finding good actors or actresses, right? So what's your experience been like finding people that in that realm? Because, like, those are the people that, like, make or break what you're doing, regardless of how good the story is or how good the lighting is or how good the cinematography is. Like,
Yeah.
that really makes everything.
I feel like in Pittsburgh, there's a surprisingly, I mean, I don't know how things are as much with now that COVID has happened or whatever, but I'm sure it's still the same, where there's a pretty healthy film scene in Pittsburgh. And there's a lot of people looking to act, a lot of people looking to be in things, and they're always paying attention to what everyone's doing, and then participating in things like the 48 helps sort of showcase who you are and let people see who you are and the kind of things you can make. So I found that people would often gravitate towards us and talk to us at events or things like that. Like, networking is very important in film. So, you know, if you do something like the 48 or you go to a film festival, you stick around afterwards and talk to people, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I found it easier to find people. At first, I just sort of, I think I had a good intuition on people who would gel well with us and would write, we wrote characters, we'd sort of write with specific people in mind. But at this point, I'm able to actually do casting calls and have auditions. So for Boonies, we actually auditioned our cast and selected them from auditions. But I've had a pretty good experience in finding. I mean, I had one really bad actor that, like, you know, not like bad in quality, but bad in their personal life, but it's like a whole different thing altogether. But for the most part, I found people were great to work with, and they were hungry, and that's important. You know, if an artist is hungry, they really put themselves out there more, you know?
Yeah.
And I've had great experience with my actors, and I am the type of person where I'm a character director. So when I have an actor, I tend to flesh out the person's understanding of that character very thoroughly, and I encourage the actor to sort of put themselves into it and like put their own spin on it, which I think a lot of actors, when they hear that, they're like, oh man, I love that. And that's like what they're looking to do. So I think giving them that freedom, but then giving them the amount of like enough information as to like, because I'm a director writer, so everything I've ever directed, I've had a hand in writing in, you know? So I'm always sort of like, this is the goal of like this character. This is like what this character's like with with Boonies, for instance, it's about a bunch of campers that, one of the stories, there's two parallel stories. And one of the stories is a group of campers goes out to the woods, and the one guy brings his brother, and the brother doesn't want to be there, but he's there because it's like a celebration of his upcoming wedding. They're like sort of weird, like outdoorsy hip people, so that's like what they do instead of a bachelor party.
Yeah.
And he's like the odd duck, and every actor there like knew the history of how they knew that central character Will. Like if they were friends of him, they knew how long or for why, where they met. They knew like their relationships with each other. So like when they acted, it came through because like they knew what I expected, and like it wasn't just like these are the lines on a page. This is what they're feeling.
Yeah.
It was like they knew a mental history of the character behind it, you know? And it's just like, I think actors respond really well to that kind of thing. And then you tell them to like, you know, you're super talented, you know what you're doing, like do your own little spin on it. And then like encouraging when you see things you like, and you can sort of craft them that way where you're like, that was really like, you see something on the monitor and then you talk to them and you're like, oh, that, you know, what you made Marcus do there is exactly the kind of thing I'm expecting of Marcus. And then they have more information, you know, it's about feeding them information so they can make educated decisions as an actor, you know?
Yeah. Now, with directing a wide variety of people, do you find that it's almost like needing to learn like different air quote languages? Like, because everybody has like different ways of how they understand things. I find that a lot, especially with songwriting.
Yeah.
And like, you know, what one person considers a verse or something is what somebody will be like, oh, that's called this or that. Like there's all these different things.
Yeah.
You have that sort of thing with dealing with people in the movies?
Yeah, that definitely is something. I mean, actors especially, because some of them need more direction than others. And then with crew and stuff, some of them are more professionally taught, like they went to school for it. And some of them are more indie folks that are just sort of learning. So like some of them expect you to have a knowledge that frankly you don't have if you're self-taught. Like you don't know these terms, and Smee and I have a weird way of just making up our own terms. So if you're on us set, you have to like learn the way we work.
Fair enough.
You know, so yeah, definitely.
I think that, ultimately it probably requires a lot of patience, right?
Yeah.
And dealing with things so you don't blow up and become one of those like viral directors that's on a set yelling at everybody, right?
Yeah, just being a total ass.
So have you found the patience that's required to get a film done successfully? Has that leaked into your normal life at all? Or were you already like a patient, understanding person going into this?
I guess it. Yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty, laid back guy these days. I don't know if I always was in my 20s and stuff. No, but yeah, it definitely had a role because I've put myself through a lot of projects, and doing those projects required an immense amount of self-discipline and self-motivation and patience and determination, and they knock you down, you get back up, So it really has influenced my life in my 30s a lot. I just sort of don't really let a lot of everyday stresses get to me that I think get to most people, because I have lived a life of almost 10 years now of constant like discipline and determination, just sort of being like, hey, you just got to keep doing it. You just have to keep getting up and moving, and like
Totally.
making it happen. And living a life that way can definitely create a more mindful state of mind in your everyday life, I think, where you sort of value the little victories and don't really sweat the small failures, But yeah, I mean, it has definitely. The short answer, I mean, more than just the patience. I think a lot of the virtues I had to learn to successfully get larger scale things made, because like being the professor took 2 years. None of us paid. We didn't pay anybody. No one expected to get paid. We're all just doing it for the love, We took 2 years to do it, like consistent effort. So it's just like that kind of large scale effort definitely has an effect on you,
Yeah, I think that sometimes people, understandably so, if you're not like in a certain realm of whatever it is you're engaging with, I think a lot of people take for granted how much effort goes into a lot of things. And sometimes like I might talk to somebody and they're like, it really took you a year to get that album done? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's tough.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is like, while it may be a year, I mean, I don't know what your schedule's like, but I can't work on music, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, because like I have a job and other responsibilities in life outside of like what I'm doing. Even if like all I want to fucking do is work on music, I just like realistically can't. There's like things that if I abandon or avoid, then I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
life happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So how do you balance this? 'Cause like it also becomes interesting when like what you're working towards is like your passion, like your business and play are kind of like it's all starting to meld together, right?
Yeah.
So I want to ask like, well, how do you balance like, a work life scenario? But like I can't answer that question because it's all the fucking same. Like everything that makes me happy is like in some way attached to my work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of weird. Like it's awesome, but also if you're not careful, I think it could be very, very bad.
Yeah, you burn out real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced burnout more than a few times, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta make sure you find at least something outside of outside of whatever work or passion or whatever. You gotta have some sort of thing that's purely just a hobby,
Yeah.
just for you, even if it's just like getting outside or something.
What is Lance's hobby?
My hobby, real big on going outdoors and getting away from everything. I'm pretty surprising. Most people don't even realize it, but I get into games sometimes, like PlayStation, because it's just I like to check out, but I don't like to passively watch things. I like the engagement. I play single player stuff alone. Yeah, I mean, it's usually just getting outside or playing a game or working on my stuff. It's like my whole life,
Yeah. Do you have any outdoor spots within the area that you would recommend to somebody that's maybe looking to get out there?
McConnell's Mills. It's like 40 minutes away, but god damn, is it gorgeous. Like, I love McConnell's Mills. Me and my girlfriend go there a lot. And surprisingly, that Raccoons State Park's pretty nice too.
Yeah,
people go to that a lot, but McConnell's Mills is probably my favorite. I mean, giant boulders. Like I go bouldering and stuff there and stuff.
What is bouldering?
It's like it's not quite mountain climbing because like
okay.
You're not going as vertical, but it's sort of like interesting. It's like physical activity, but it's very much for the problem solving mind, where it's like I want to figure out how to get there and how do I get to it, and because like there's a lot of, I don't know if it was a giant river at some point. There's massive like boulders and rock formations there and stuff. So it's like a mix. It's like halfway between hiking and rock climbing, where you're just sort of like testing yourself to see if you can really reach something on your own volition,
Yeah. When you were younger, you mentioned like how so much of these things that you're interested in are tied to like nostalgia. Did you play in the woods or outdoors a lot as a kid?
I grew up in the woods. Yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah,
right. That's right.
yeah.
That
Well,
makes sense.
like I mean, I had there was a town. I wasn't like super rural. I grew up in like a very New Englandy looking town, but my dad's house was like right outside of town. We are surrounded by the forest, we had Babbling Creek and stuff. So he still lives there. It's gorgeous, but I grew up like surrounded by the forest.
So is like because like bouldering kind of sounds like a grown up playing in the woods sort of type of thing, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
Do you have any fun, maybe somewhat unexpected stories from being in the woods? Have you ever come across anything that may be like a horror movie, or is anything in the woods giving you inspiration for anything that you've done or written?
Well, I mean, the movie I made is entirely in the forest. I mean, I think one of the reasons we got picked up was the distributor was so surprised how effectively a low budget did horror in the daytime in the woods, which is weird, you know? So, I mean, the entire environment I grew up in influenced that movie because, like, I don't know, I love the woods. So what better place to shoot than in the forest, you know? But, I mean, I don't know if, I mean, I've been out a lot, but, like, have I ever experienced anything particularly like crazy or wild? Like, no, I'm actually thinking about it. I don't know if I have.
You haven't even like come across like the dusty nudie mag or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, back home, like you could find places in the woods where people had probably spent time partying like 5 to 10 years prior. So you find like relics of like high schoolers past, and you're just sort of like, whoa, this is like wild shit, you know? Magazines and beer cans that don't exist anymore, and like it's fun to sort of, you know, it would be fun to sort of just like think about who are these people and like what were they like and what were they doing, you know, and they were out here too, you know. Like that was always kind of cool. There used to be a big scary house near, maybe this influenced Boonies too, I don't know. But there used to be a house you could get to through my forest, and it was this old farm that was no longer, it was owned by somebody, but it was like out of, like, nobody used it anymore. But it was this old red house, we called it the Red House, and in front of it had a grove of trees that were all dead. And you'd go into it, and the whole place was in disrepair. The shit from like the early in the 60s and 50s were still in it, and like there was like farm equipment from like that looked like stuff from the 40s or something, rusted and like in weeds and like falling over barns. I mean, that shit was pretty wild. That was a place you take people to like freak them out at night. You know what I mean? Like
the Red House.
Yeah, we called it the Red House, and now I'm sitting here being like, I made a movie about
an Amazon Prime
and,
original.
Yeah, well, I'm like here now. I'm like, I made a movie about a scary house in the middle of nowhere. Like maybe that got in my brain more than I think.
Yeah, you know. So in terms of doing things outside of horror, you had mentioned that you don't want to do horror forever.
Yeah, I'm not like, you know, there's these people that they like live it, you know.
Sure.
I don't know if I'm one of those people.
I think it's, I mean, is somebody that, you know, I'm still doing like heavy metal music. It's like in my DNA. I mean, I do other stuff outside of it, but like I feel like no matter what, I'm always going to be in a fucking metal band to some degree. You know, it's like, you know, metal and horror tied a lot in a lot of different ways. A lot of the same demographic, right?
Yeah, similar motifs often.
What would you want to do? Like, what would be like the primary genre of something that you would like to shoot?
I mean, it's funny because it's like, I don't want to get into horror, but like, it sounds weird to say, but I mean, thriller is more, like more grounded.
Yeah.
Like, I so far, people who know me in Pittsburgh's film scene, I've become associated with horror because it's all I've really done.
Sure.
And I can do it effectively. I mean, our movie Daisy did really well back in the day, and I made this web series. It's horror comedy, and Boonies is horror, and like, I can do it effectively. And I'm a huge fan of 70s horror. Most people are into 80s horror now, but I'm really into 70s horror. And if you watch the Boonies, it's pretty obvious I'm into 70s horror because I tried to make it feel like a modern 70s horror movie. It's got that sort of, I like the like 70s horror feels like dangerous, you know, like real, like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hills Have Eyes, Last House on the Left. These are the sort of movies that influenced the Boonies. Yeah. And I tried to give it that feel.
Yeah, I think that the 80s really introduced like the fantasy element into horror, which is cool and it's fun, but it definitely left the plane of reality.
Yeah, and the gore became more like extravagant and like
Well,
showy.
you know, it's funny. The same thing happened with like metal in a lot of ways.
Oh,
Like if
yeah.
you think about like traditional metal, it was all like a little bit more grounded, but over time it's gotten more and more extreme.
Like
and how do we
theatrical
theatrical and like everything has to top the next, and it happened with horror too.
Yeah, it did. But I liked the more like the rawness of 70s horror. You know?
Sure.
I liked when you like, I mean, like is a strong word. I liked it because it messed with my head. You know what I mean? I remember it more because it messed with me. Like things like Last House on the Left and stuff. Like the scenes felt like you shouldn't be seeing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I liked that. Like I thought that was more effective in terms of the word horror, and even supernatural stuff. Like I like The Exorcist a lot. It was made in the 70s. You know, and but that's why I mean I would like to go to your original question. Well, some of my upcoming like ideas I'd like to pitch are more in the vein of more thriller, like human nature being the scary thing, like things people really do, like things that are like happening around us, things that people get away with, things that like I want to explore more moral gray areas and like ramifications of violence and how it really affects people, not like horror movies where it's like, oh, this is scary. Like more things like violence is traumatic, you know?
Well, there's that movie, remember Hard Candy?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's like the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, really. Like, I mean, there was definitely in the 2000s, there was a subgenre of horror that got into this kind of more thriller stuff. And I liked French horror from the 2000s, which would explore the ramifications of violence a lot. And like, because violence is fucked up, you know? And I would like, I'm attracted to the idea of exploring it in a serious way.
Yeah,
you know,
there's a French film, Martyrs.
I mean, okay, so you're familiar exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
New French Extreme.
Yeah,
like Martyrs is a influential movie on me.
Sure,
for sure.
Yeah.
Irreversible, like the Gaspar Noé, like the stuff of that Martyrs was born from.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Inside, yeah,
mm-hmm.
And they're insane movies. Like I don't know if I want to go as far as they go,
yeah,
you know, but their way of shooting it grounded, but then presenting you with like traumatic things, like is affecting. I think it finds very affecting.
Martyrs is so wild to me because
it's so wild.
It's so undeniably extreme, right?
Yeah.
But if you get through that, you're like, wow, this is a really like grounded, interesting, cool story.
Yeah.
It's intense, but like it really gets in your brain.
I agree. And
like even though it is like really gory and fucking wild,
definitely wild,
but it doesn't like lean on that as the gimmick. It's like that movie could be a quarter of as gory as it is, and I don't think it would be any worse of a movie.
Exactly.
It would still be a great movie.
It's a well-made film, and it presents it presents things about the human experience to you, and it asks questions about life. Like I don't want to spoil the ending, but like just like that question, like you end up actually being like you first you're like, oh, this movie's fucked up, and then by the end you're like, am I sort of like what are they saying at the end? Like you're trying to answer the question that it's like positing.
It's weird. It's like three different stories. Like you think that movie ends like then like, oh no, there's another fucking 45 minutes and it's like going in this completely other place where it just gets like more and more like meta and artistic, but really narrows in on the story.
Yeah, I mean,
it starts out like it's like a really simple gory revenge thing, right? And you're like, whoa, this is fucked up. And like the first time I watched it, I was not ready. It's like one of those things, like I watched it by myself and immediately I'm like, I need to get a hold of everybody that I know. Like, who has seen this?
Exactly. Like, it's funny you'd seen it because I was going to mention it, but usually I mention the movie and people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So this time I chose to not mention it, and then you brought it up.
Sure.
But I had seen it, and then the Row House in Lawrenceville, the one Halloween like 2 years ago or whatever, it was like 2019. Yeah, they were showing it. Right, so I got together like 7 people, and I did not tell them what the movie was going to be. Like, all I told them, I was like, you need to be prepared. This movie is wild, and it has definitely got some fucked up stuff in it, and that's all I told them.
Yeah.
And then after we did it, and I picked I had different friends into totally different things, and then we went to Thunderbird or something like right afterwards and drank, and we talked about that movie and the question and what some of the stuff they're trying to say means. You know, like that sort of vague ending that it has. Like we were like talking about that movie for like 45 minutes to an hour straight right after we watched it. And it's like, that's like you're saying, like, it's not just like some torture porn movie. It's like, it makes you actually ask questions and you think about it. And it sticks with you. Like,
Yeah.
you think about that movie for like a couple days afterwards. You're just sort of like, what the, like, yeah. So I that's what I did. I found people and I made them watch it because I had to know what other people thought. Like,
Yeah.
like I had to know. I couldn't just be the only person I knew that saw this movie.
Yeah, I think that, the interesting thing with movies like that is I think a lot of people don't necessarily, they watch movies to check out.
Yeah.
And that's not one that you check out to.
No, it pulls you back.
Yeah, you're
in.
throwing a lot at people with
Yeah.
that, But yeah, I think I love stuff like that. I think even though I tried to make a movie in high school, I think like film nowadays is the one thing that like I try to stay reasonably disconnected from it so I could still enjoy it.
Yeah, it definitely affects your enjoyment when you start doing it.
I mean, I think it's inevitable that like I can watch something and nitpick something, but it doesn't happen as much with movies as it does with like music. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, the mix on that sucks. But if I'm like watching a movie and something's lit weird or like there's a cut that feels real jarring, I'm like, that was weird. But then I just keep going.
just
I'm
keep
like,
moving on.
whatever.
Yeah, it's for me. It's more. It's just like I spent so much time making it. I like don't even want to like. I'm just like not as interested in interacting with it beyond that. You know what I mean? Like it becomes a thing where it's like I'm a producer of this content. I'm less interested in consuming it. Like I know a shit ton about movies from like 1993 to like 2008, but like I really drop off like in the last like 5 years or so because
it's really hard to keep up.
I just sort of watch things that really stick out to me, but there's a lot I think I make movies and they expect me to know all about them now, but it's just like sometimes I want to do something different.
Sure.
Like
I mean, I have a hard time keeping up with new albums.
oh my God, there's so much content and everything these days.
Yeah, it's like I feel like it was a lot. I knew more back when I actually had to go out of my way to find things somehow.
Yeah.
Now that like it's all on my phone,
I agree.
I'm just like I'll get to it later.
Yeah, with music, I used to have to buy the album, or I would like download them and create the album just because I'd look up the track listings and find each MP3 and make a CD, and then like I had a much stronger relationship with each individual album and stuff. And now it's like I'll know a song because I heard it on Spotify, it was recommended to me, and then I'll go to like because it'll come on my random a lot, and then one time I'll actually want to listen to it, and I'll realize that I have no idea who the artist was of that song, and I listen to it all the time. And I don't even know the artist, much less the whole album. That's weird to me.
Yeah.
Because I used to be the guy that, I knew every album from every band I liked and like the order of them. And I get you. Because you're just sort of like, now it's like everything's all about the single tracks and not the actual.
Yeah. I used to be so nerdy about everything. So, and like now I'm very much like, whatever. Like my movie collection used to be alphabetized by director.
Oh yeah.
And now I've moved a few times, and now everything's like not even in barely order. It's in like loose alphabetical, just in the wall. Like whatever, I'll find it. Like I just don't care anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I don't even buy physical movies anymore. Like the stuff I have is the same stuff I've had for the last 15 years.
Same. It has to be really, really, really something for me to like go out of my way to obtain a physical copy of it.
I agree. Yeah.
But I will say over the past couple years, I've been getting better about making time to like watch movies, whether it's like catching up with old things that I've like haven't watched in a while or have never seen, or watching new things as well.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely do. It's just, I think people are often surprised at how much I don't these days, but I still do. I mean,
yeah, well, it's impossible to like do what you're doing and engage with things at the same time, right?
Consistently,
yeah. It could be really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So with everything right now, we're waiting for the quarter to end to see how the Boonies did.
Yeah, it's first quarter,
right?
Like, oh my God.
So what are you doing in the meantime creatively? Like right now, are you working on stuff behind the scenes, or is it just like downtime right now, taking a break after getting a movie done?
It's definitely a lot of downtime. That's part of it, but I'm working on a couple different treatments, like 5-page sort of a movie written almost like a short story, like to pitch as an idea, then I can write a script around it. So I'm doing a few treatments, and there's like 4 I think I'm really focusing on, and each one is sort of aimed at what I view to be a different budget range based on how well Booney seems to be doing, because unfortunately that will dictate what I can do. Like if boonies make significant money against what the guys who paid for put in, then I become somebody who is a profitable person. So I can go to somebody and be like, well, if those guys gave me this and it made that, what could I do for, you know, $1 million or 2 million, you know?
Yeah.
And like, if not though, and I'm still where I'm at and I'm still scraping by at indie stuff. So I have a couple treatments that I, you know, will shop around to either private or like private investor or studio based on what I think I could do, you know? So I just want to have my bases covered for when I find out. And then I have like one little, I have a little like purely creative project I'm going to start working on the fall here that is just for me and for Smee and for Matt and for all of us that I've been working with, for us to just do it again for the reasons we used to do it, just to do it, you know, just to get in touch with like the same people who were doing this years ago, and all the people I've worked with. There's a group of people I tend to work with a lot, like all of us, and like why we started doing this in the first place, just to make things and just to make it. But now with the knowledge we've all learned since we used to just start, you know?
Yeah. I think it's important to stay sharp, right? Like you gotta
keep on
the ball, right?
I agree.
Otherwise, like you'll lose it. That's kind of what I was talking about in terms of how often can you like rehearse what you're doing or keep sharp, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not like, unless you're just like going out and filming shit and editing it just to do it.
Yeah.
But like it's a lot of effort.
There's no, really though, you and a group of 3 people could make a pretty decent thing. It's 5 minutes long, and you should, you know, like that's what I'm just going to try to stay sharp, especially now that the pandemic seems to have at least got to a point where you can do things with people again. So,
and people won't look at you weird. You could have been doing things with people the whole time, but people would think you're like a heathen.
Like, what are you doing? But now you can sort of go out and do things and film things.
You know,
so just want to stay sharp.
This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it's just so funny how people are, because like one of the loudest people on my Facebook feed about people like, you know, wearing masks and not being around people and being safe, which that's cool if that's your fucking jam. The second things were okay, there's like a picture of him with his shirt off around a bunch of people online, like, there we go. I'm like, how are you the loudest, you know, like, don't do this, and then you're the first fucking half-naked person I see on Facebook once it's okay.
Right, you know, I mean, people just don't ever know what the fuck they're doing, dude. I mean, it's just like my mantra for life and the way I view the world, like my worldview is, and I am not exempt from this, I feel like people are just, everybody is just full of shit, and the good life is to minimize the amount of shit you are full of. Like, that's just what I feel like.
Okay.
You know, like everybody has a little bit of it. There's, you know, 60 something logical fallacies that play in your brain all the time, right? Like that we're always combating against, right? So it's just like, you always got to check yourself, like we were talking about. So it's just people like that, like, you don't know, like, does he know what he's doing? I don't know. You know, like, does he really like, or is he just saying stuff because it makes him feel like he's just doing whatever at that time is validating, you know, like,
yeah,
which is you know, if you're just trying to validate yourself all the time, you can get full of shit real quick, you know?
Yeah, I think that is somebody who, you know, again, looping around to the beginning of this conversation, somebody who has an interesting time from day to day figuring out who they are and what makes them happy and what they want to do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out for myself. I can't possibly try to figure out anybody else.
Right. And you'll be figuring it out forever, man. Like that's the beauty of creativity, is you never figure it out. It's just it's a pursuit that is often rewarding, often disappointing, but it's just a constant hunt that, you know, never seems to end, but we keep doing it because we gotta, or else, like, what's the point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. If I'm not happy doing this, then why should I expect anybody else to be happy with me doing it?
Yeah, like you got
That's why, like, sometimes, like, I feel bad because, like, I do this shit a lot where, like, on the podcast I start talking about, like, I don't know why I fucking do this. I shouldn't say shit like that out loud.
Why not though? You're why not though? I mean, you're openly exploring, like, the thoughts and feelings that you have, and it helps you. Like, what if that's a reason maybe you're doing this podcast, right? And, like, bring it full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning. Like, what if that's a big reason you're doing it? Because it gives you a way to sort of work through these sort of things you're feeling, these demons. And that is, in my opinion, a perfectly good reason to continue doing it and to do it. Like, if it helps you, if other people hear it and they like it, but for you, it helps you work through a lot of this stuff, and that's a very valid reason, and it's worth all the effort in the world because you're exploring yourself, you're expressing yourself, you're sort of working through these things in your head with different people and different opinions all the time.
Yeah.
And that's a fantastic way to explore what you're going through, with other varied opinions and thoughts and minds, So like, I don't know. I think you should keep on doing it.
Oh, I'm going to keep doing it.
Keep on saying it out loud.
I'm going to keep on doing it. I think that
you have my support. You have my support for sure.
All right. Well, thank you. I've definitely, I go way out of my way to make the show happen. It's going to keep happening. It's just always why am I doing this, and making sure it's for good reasons.
Yeah.
And reasons that are
important,
beneficial for everyone in the world around me. Because if I wanted to just be like, one of these podcasts is just like one person talking at the camera, I could do that. But I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's about you and the 401 other episodes that we've done.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great reason. I think it's great what you're doing, honestly.
Well, thank you for coming by. As we round the station, we've looped back around to the beginning of the conversation. We've been going over an hour. I think that we're good.
Yeah.
This is plenty of conversation.
Yeah.
So let people know where they can find the Boonies. Let people know where they can find you and anything else that you want them to find.
The Boonies is available video on demand, and that is what's that? My camera. A video. It's available video on demand. You could rent it, buy it anywhere that you're probably thinking of. Xbox Store, YouTube, Amazon, like literally any digital platform we're on. We'll be on physical, if physical media is your thing. Best Buy, Walmart, July 27th. Theo and the Professor, we mentioned it like 15 times, so look that up. It's on YouTube for free. It's on Amazon, but I think you have to pay for it now, but it's for free on YouTube. Check that out if you're into like kitschy, funny horror stuff. And you can find me, really, I don't engage with social media as much as I used to, but you can find me on Instagram at Lance Parkin. It's really, at this point, the only thing I really update much. So, yeah, that's it.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming by.
Thanks,
and I'm going to do an outro here, and it's going to go like this. And that is all, folks. Thanks so much for being here. One more time, Lance Parkin. Thank you. I'll be back again next week with another episode. Same time, same place, same channel. You know the drill. My name is Sykes. Start the beat 2021. Woo woo. Thanks for listening. And we're done. That's a podcast. We made it happen.
Good. That was great.
Cool. Thank you. And this will just fade out. And all right. It happened.